Come forward. I feel lonely. Come see me. Come talk to me. Don't ignore me. I'm going to use a laser pointer now. You, Richard. Cat, behave yourself. Quite like the power. Hello, everybody. In case you weren't here in the previous session, I'm Sam, and I am a product manager for Aria Hub and Graph, which is free, has a free tier. But I am here actually as a member of London VMUG, and as it's actually my 11th year as a member of London VMUG, which, thank you, I see those hands. I'm going to talk about how you can supercharge your career with VMUG. Now, obviously, you guys are at VMUG, so it may not be quite the right audience, or it might be quite the right audience. And I had a bit of a wrestle while I was writing this presentation, because I don't want to just talk in airy-fairy. I want to give you examples of what's going on and how stuff helps in your career. But in order to do that, the only one I can really honestly talk about is my career. And I didn't want to just talk about me. So I kind of went back and forth and was like, well, shall I talk about stuff to do with me or just VMUG? And I've kind of tried to balance that in between. The impression that I do not want to give is that I think the clicker will work. I don't think I have made it. I'm not here standing going, look at my career. And that's not what I want to come across. What I want to come across is how, if you get involved with VMUG, you can give yourself the best opportunities and the best chances and the best opportunities for your career. Okay, so please bear in mind, whatever I'm saying, I am not saying I have made it. I have my career path. I've done the things that I've done, and that's not for everyone. I'm not saying it is the path. Okay, everybody got that? Okay, this is the way. Okay, so a career timeline. This is my career from 2003, when I started my first IT job. Before that, I was a graphic designer, which sounds weird, but I was, and then somehow segued into IT. But in 2003, I took my first purely IT job. And you can see here on my timeline, I've split this between pre-VMUG and post-VMUG. As I mentioned, 11 years at London VMUG. There are a few kind of career moments before this. My first interaction with a VMware product, VMware server, was in 2006. I was working for a charity. Charities don't have a lot of budget. VMware server allowed me to run multiple servers on one physical server, which was it was important. Oh, look at that! There's a meeting going on that I shouldn't be at. I can't see it. That's annoying. Go away. I'm in presenter mode. Right. There's another one. Okay. 2007, I started blogging, and that was a start of my interactions with VMware community, with the life that surrounds VMware products and stuff. But it wasn't until late 2007 that I ever even did my first IT exam. Okay, so you can see there's this kind of pre-VMUG expanse where actually there's not a huge amount going on. I changed jobs a couple of times. I got bored after about a year and a half, 2 years in most jobs, and then looked to move. But I was just kind of coasting along, really. And January 2012, I attended my first London VMUG. I only really found out about VMUG through Twitter, and only then because it was an accidental thing. But I heard about this VMUG thing and thought I'd give it a go. A day out of the office, it's always good. And I convinced my boss to let me go, paid for it, the train ticket and everything myself. At the time, I just kind of started working at an insurance company, a global data center for an insurance company. And so I'd kind of come along my VMware path, VMware Microsoft path, and I was sort of proficient, but just basically working as an IT analyst in a data center. But I attended my first London VMUG. And from that, things started to snowball and escalate. I did my first VMware VCP in December 2012. And I've picked out some like firsts in this timeline just simply because it gives you an idea of when things started moving along in my career. And then we'll talk about why I think these things happened and what helps along the way. March 2013, I got vExpert for the first time, and that was largely off the back of the fact that I started blogging and wrote a whole load of blogs after my first VMUG. If you look at the number of blogs per year, it goes along like that, and then VMUG, and then started interacting with the community and producing content. July 2013, my first ever London VMUG talk, my first ever VMUG talk, but my first ever London VMUG talk. And that was significant for a number of reasons, but for one very big one, which I'll talk about in a minute as well. First advanced VMware certification was in August 2013, and you can see how these things are stacking up on top of each other. There's 3 events or 4 events that I thought were significant before then, and it's starting to build up. My first VMworld was October 2013. First UK VMUG, so a national VMUG conference, was November 2013. The first time I used VMware's cloud products was 2014, and again, I'll talk about why that's significant. I then, over the next year, I did a lot of study over the next year, and basically to build up towards attempting my VCDX, which was again another massive career milestone. But all of this is literally building up from that first London VMUG. And I'm not saying this because I think this is the career path, as I mentioned before. You know, everyone's path is different. This is what happened. What happened to me. So October 2015, I retook. I missed out one important thing, which was our sponsors today, Extrovert. I was working. 2014, beginning of 2014, I went to work for Extrovert as a consultant, and it was the first time that I'd switched from being a VMware customer to a VMware partner, from someone who was consuming, maintaining IT services, to someone who was going and doing it for other people, and that was again a very big move in terms of career, and I can trace it all back again to that first London VMUG, and there is a point to having all of this here. I will get to it. And then the last little bit I've just dumped on all at once. 2017, I joined VMware as a PSO consultant. Had a little bit of contracting in between for about 2.5 months. I spoke at VMworld for the first time in August 2019. I changed roles to technical marketing in September 2019, and then most recently last year I joined product management. And that is the course of my career over, that's 20 years, right?
No, now, son.
You're older than me.
He's older than everyone.
Oh, burn! But you can see I've not fudged these numbers. I've not made it up, right? I've literally trawled back on my blog, looking at like, shall I put the blog post numbers, and I could do a graph that goes along like this, and then suddenly blogging, or whatever metric I tried to look at it from, it all happened. There was this epoch in 2012, 2013, where things started moving forward and changing. So really, the message I want to give you from that is joining VMUG will not accelerate your career, or just joining VMUG will not accelerate your career. But before you start throwing chairs at me, Linda, put that down. Just joining a VMUG won't accelerate your career. But getting involved and getting in with the community, learning to speak, learning to present, learning to learn. All of these things which VMUG enables and gives you opportunities to do will accelerate your career. So I mentioned, the first time I spoke. This is an actual real-life photo from 2013 of me without a beard, presenting on why to automate with Power CLI. What do you mean? I still look young. VMUG sucks. I'm going. VMUG is a safe space to hone your skills. Nobody would take the mickey out of you. Nobody will mock you while you're speaking. But VMUG for me was a safe place to learn to speak in public. Now, if you had known me in all of those years before 2012, 2013, I am an introvert. Before the idea of getting up in front of a group, even a smallish group like this, would make me physically sick. Right? The nerves of getting up to speak in front of people. And to some extent, I still get nervous. It doesn't go away. But public speaking is a skill that you can learn. It's a skill you can acquire. And VMUG is that safe place where you can learn those skills. Now, these skills are important in career. And they're very important in career because whether you're learning to speak to a room full of 5 people, 10 people, 50 people, 100 people, even, dare I say, 1,000 people, or if you're talking to a room full of C-suite, CTOs and CEOs and powerful business people, or whoever it is you're talking to, the skills are fundamentally the same. What's that?
Do you imagine them naked?
I don't imagine anyone naked. No, that's a HR violation for you. Red card. But right, so I'm an introvert. I come home from events like VMUG and I'm exhausted, and my wife will look at me and go and sit down in a quiet place, in a dark place, and just sit still for a little bit, because I find it exhausting to meet people, which is all VMUG. I find it exhausting to speak in public, which is VMUG, and it's learning, and I find learning is one of those activities where your brain is just going, and if you're learning and you're wrestling with new ideas and stuff, that's tiring too. But VMUG is a safe place to start that. And I first spoke 2013, right? I was looking back. I've got a folder with all my presentations and all of my my speaking things, and they're all dated. So I was looking back and I was like, pretty much twice a year at least, I have spoken at London VMUG since then. And it's not that I think they were fairly desperate for most of that time, obviously, because it's not that I'm a great public speaker or even that I have a huge amount of knowledge to transfer, but they are eager and willing for you to, start presenting, to hone your skill, to start to develop your, I was going to say persona, not persona, your public image almost, your brand. That's a good word for it. Well done, marketing. So what I want to say here, I would encourage you to, if you've never presented at a VMUG before, maybe give it a go. Talk to Linda, talk to one of the guys. Say, look, I'd like to talk. I don't really know where to start. I've got an idea. I don't have an idea. They can help you. They can, Michael will help you. Michael will help you. I'll help you. Talk to anyone who's spoken. They will encourage you to do it because it is a really rewarding thing to do. And from this, start, this humble beginnings of this fresh-faced, slightly pink-shirted person, I have spoken at VMUG. I've spoken at National VMUGs. I've spoken at VMworld US and Barcelona. I've been invited to the Scottish VMUG, Northeast VMUG, Southwest VMUG, Belgium VMUG. I've spoken on global VMUGs. I've done vBrown bags. I've done VMware code events. I've spoken at a lot of places, and it all sort of stems back from this very nervous start that I had, where I would I think I left the room afterwards, went straight into the toilet and just breathed for a little bit. So VMUG is a safe space to start that learning of how to speak, how to present. There we go. Now, the other thing that VMUG does is it introduces you to new ideas and new things. Oh, I left the subtitle on. So if I look at things, big events in my career, not just for infants, that was the previous slide. And do you know what? Oh, no, I did change it for the next one. That's all right. You can also learn PowerPoint while you're doing this. Yeah? Just chatting, you know. I'm just pretending there's no one here. It's not that I'm pretending you're naked. There's no one here. So VMUG events, they introduced me first of all to Power CLI. Now, in that 2013 picture, I was presenting on Power CLI. The first time I had been introduced to it was in that 2012 VMUG, when I think it was Alan Renouf was talking about it. So that was a seed that started in my head, and I learned over that next year, 18 months, and actually learned Power CLI. Now, Power CLI led me down the path of automation. It led me to vCloud Automation Center, vRealize Automation, which is now Aria Automation. It led me down that path. I was first introduced to NSX, and when I joined VMware PSO, I joined as an NSX consultant, automating NSX with Power CLI and vRealize Automation. NSX led me into the world of Kubernetes when we were first doing the CNI for NSX, and we were first doing the cloud native cloud networking interface, CNI, where NSX was provisioning networks for containers. And so that's how I first started learning about this Kubernetes thing. Now, the first time I learned about that was at a VMUG, okay? And home labs, right? Almost all of my learning over all of that span of time was done in a home lab. And the reason that I started and built a home lab was because someone came along and presented a VTardis. And I was like, what's a VTardis? It was a home lab in a wheelie bin or something, right? It's all these ideas, all of these things that came from being involved in a VMUG. So, you know, ordinarily, you know, when there's loads of different vendors at a VMUG or at an event, I always recommend that you go and talk to the vendors. Number one, it supports VMUG, right? The vendors are happy, they pay money, VMUG happens. But actually, if you go and talk to vendors, especially some of them are like you've never heard of them vendors, and you figure out what they're doing, you can actually start getting ideas about, you know, where the future of certain technologies are going. So if I take an example, you know, the first time I went to KubeCon, I went and I talked to a whole bunch of really niche vendors that I'd never heard of before. And I was chatting to them all, and I came across the concept of eBPF. Okay, now this was only a few years ago. eBPF was fairly new, fairly unknown, but they were building some really cool things with really cool tools with this new thing. And so I started digging in a bit onto what eBPF is, and would you know it, what I'm doing right now is I'm building a tool for VMware as a product manager that runs on an open source product that is based on eBPF. Is that a coincidence that I find myself in a job where I'm actually implementing for the company I work for something that I stumbled across from a vendor? It could be a coincidence. It's just that you won't get introduced to huge amounts of new ideas if you don't go and explore new ideas, right? That makes sense. VMUG is a great place to explore new ideas, to find out about new things, and to talk to people. And just a word on like the whole education and learning thing. My kickstart to my first VCP was after I came to my first London VMUG again, right? I can trace it back there. Someone talked about their exam experience on doing a VCP. And from that, I pestered my boss, got myself onto a course, went and did my VCP. And then over the course of the next 6 years, I did 20 plus VMware exams, all the way up to my VCDX. I did 6 AWS exams. I did 3 of the Kubernetes CNCF exams. I did a huge amount of exams, but it all kind of funnels back to that inception point, back when I first thought, oh, you know what? Maybe I should do some certification, because someone planted that idea at a VMUG. VMUG Advantage, by the way, I kept meaning to ask for a slide that had all the VMUG Advantage stuff. It was shown earlier. A lot of this stuff you can get a leg up with VMUG Advantage, like lab licenses, VMUG Advantage, discounted training, VMUG Advantage, discounted exams, VMUG Advantage. There's if you're wanting to start really actively pursuing stuff, VMUG Advantage is, and I'm not being even paid to say that, am I, Linda? I just wanted to mention that, because VMUG Advantage wasn't around when I first started that, and it wasn't until I was basically using my employer's licenses in my home lab until I got vExpert right in that 2013. Don't tell them, in 2013. I'm not going to tell you which employer's licenses. Could have been any of them. The third point I'm going to make before I go completely off rail, networking, a leg up for introverts. As I previously mentioned, I am an introvert. It may not seem it while I'm standing up here, but if you've ever seen me arrive at a VMUG, I'll go till I see someone I know, or probably Linda, and then go and talk to someone I know, because I'm not actually very outgoing as a person. I'm not great at walking up to people and going, "Hey, how you doing?" That's not me. I think to a certain extent, as an introvert, it's a skill you can learn. Interestingly, if you do one of those personality tests, and you're quite an introverted person, I would challenge you to do one in the morning before you come to a VMUG. Come to a VMUG, make an effort, talk to as many people as you want, and then do the same test afterwards. And you will find that it changes your outcome from that test, or most likely you will. And that's because actually you can. It's a skill, just like presenting is a skill. It's a skill, and actually being able to interact more. And I say this as, I'm not saying it as fix an introvert. There are many advantages to being introverted. But one of the disadvantages is not necessarily reaching out and talking to people when you should. But you will find that you learn more. Anyway, I digress. So I'm going to look at some sort of cause and effect here. I started using social media, Twitter mainly, in 2007. And the outcome from that is I went to my first VMUG. There are a lot of other things, a lot of people I met, a lot of good conversations, a lot of people who I then met later at events and things like that through social media. But the main outcome for me from that was I actually went to a VMUG. Now, I talked a little bit about doing the VCDX. I would not have done it had I not met a few people who were doing VCDX, who encouraged me to give it a go and formed a study group. Greg Robertson and Leo Kamrat, we formed a little study group. We all went in that first time, and we all failed that first time. And then we, as a study group, had to all pick ourselves up and go back and relearn and restudy. And we went back and, we all have our VCDX numbers. But without forming that study group, from people I met, talking to people at VMUG, I don't know that I would have picked myself up that second time. And that is just simply a factor of how much effort it was, but also, having people around you who are like-minded, they're aiming for the same things as you, it's a massive encouragement. It's much easier to do it with other people around you. So I got my VCDX from, in a large part, attributed to forming a study group with those people. I met some vExperts the first time I came to VMUG. Before, I had never even considered the possibility that vExpert would be a thing that I do. I thought vExperts, they must be experts at something. I wonder what. And so I hadn't even really thought I'd even apply. I was like, well, how? I wouldn't even qualify. But it turns out I'd been blogging and for a few years by then, and I'd built up enough of a presence and contribution that when I did apply, I actually got it. But I wouldn't have applied unless I was encouraged to by meeting some vExperts, some people in the community who sort of said, well, why, you blog, you do this, why don't you give it a go? So I applied for and got awarded vExpert back in 2013. I also met future colleagues and current colleagues, even. Michael, for example, people I've worked with, Arthur worked with, Stuart. I don't know if we didn't meet but we worked together. I went and applied and was encouraged to get a job at Extrovert. Again, it wasn't something that I'd kind of thought I would be able to do. I didn't think I had enough skills to be a consultant. But it turns out that, maybe my evaluation of my skill set wasn't the same as other people's, and people were like, well, yeah, of course you could do that. Why don't you, we got an opening, come and apply for it. Got the job. I would never have done that had I not been at London VMUG talking to people. And I say this as someone who really reluctantly talks to people, quite reluctantly. And I added this in this slide. Look, talk to sponsors. And it's not a thing VMUG want me to say in terms of they've not asked me to say it, but genuinely, if you talk to sponsors, you can really find out some decent information. You get your finger on the pulse, potentially, of things that you didn't necessarily know were a thing, like that eBPF story. What time am I supposed to finish? That's good, we're on track. Right, so let's build out this slide, okay? So I've called it my VMUG outcome slide. At the top, we've got VMUG, at the bottom, we've got career. And this is just a bit of a recap, really. So of the three kind of main things that came from VMUG, through VMUG, and directly influenced my career. The first one was learning, and that's primarily attending sessions, listening to people present. I don't know how many VMUG sessions I've actually sat through in the last 10 years, but quite a lot, I would have thought. I talked a little bit about, the lab licenses thing and the exam discounts thing. That's VMUG Advantage. And I also talked about, vExpert then feeding into lab licenses. But first and foremost, VMUG helps you adopt that learning posture. Like you're taking in information, you're taking in new ideas, you're starting to stimulate, new stuff. So the way I always approach VMUG, even if it's a topic that I already know, is actually I want to learn a little bit more. I don't use Ansible, but I thought Harry's Ansible talk earlier was really good. And I've used infrastructure as code and automation tools a lot over the last 5 or 6 years. But Ansible's not one I'd really focused on. So for me, I could have gone, I know about infrastructure as code. I've touched a bit of Ansible. I'll just sort of coast through this one. But it was really useful to compare the differences between the stuff that I knew and the stuff I didn't know, and how things were approached. And we had a conversation afterwards as well. But it's that sort of learning posture that it helps you to maintain. The second one is the public speaking and the presentation opportunities. And as I mentioned, I went from speaking that first time at local VMUGs to national VMUGs to VMworld to a job role, technical marketing, which was all about creating content and presentations. So from a career point of view, that that gem of that first talk really started the ball rolling. And I thought, I was awful on that first talk. The one thing that saved me on that day was someone, after I came out of the toilet, was someone come up to me and started going, I thought this was really good. Tell me about this, or they asked the follow-up question. And I thought, thank God for that. Someone was listening. No, they didn't all fall asleep, but also, I communicated to someone and they got it, and they've got questions and ideas. So that was huge for me. So I wouldn't underestimate the value of being able to speak and present, and having VMUG as a safe place where nobody mocks you. And then finally, that networking opportunity that you get at VMUG. These are people who are your peers, but they're people who are possibly in different environments, maybe in different careers. I met people who were consultants, and they were like, yeah, I think you could be a consultant. I think you could do it. You met people who do other things. I've met product managers. I thought, maybe I'd like to give that a try. And I'm a product manager now. Magic. Getting that VCDX, getting that kick up the butt to say, actually, yeah, go on, give it a go. That kick up the butt to say, come on, you failed the first time, but come on, give it another go. Form that study group. The kick up the butt when I met vExperts to say, apply for it. So those are the three sort of pillars that I put right at the top. The title of the talk was, community, education, and networking. And those are the three pillars of stuff that I have taken from VMUG and have really helped me along in my career. And this is the kind of final thought. Look, VMUG, as I said at the beginning, just joining a VMUG will not supercharge your career. But if you see VMUG as a place that is full of opportunities to learn, opportunities to speak, opportunities to network, meet people, get new ideas, you will quickly find that your growth starts to compound and starts to become exponential, and your career will start to get dragged along by that. Like almost everything in life, it's all about what you put in. You get out what you put in. So I would like to encourage you, if you've not, as I mentioned before, if you've not spoken at VMUG before, maybe consider it. If you've done one or two talks before, sign up for another one. They're always after content, they're always after people. And meet people and chat with people. And if you see an introvert in the corner, maybe go and chat to that introvert. They might have an interesting story or whatever. And if you're an extrovert, meet all of the introverts, because they're probably the only ones going, like standing next to you going like this, like me. So on that, I'm done. Yeah.